Hey, I'm Laura. Thank you for watching this episode of the Undistracted podcast with author Hannah Brencher. We're talking about her new book, Fighting Forward, where she shares a little bit of her journey with anxiety, depression, and learning how to find your one thing after a season like that, and also learn how to ensure that those kind of experiences in our past don't necessarily impact us from moving forward, but also how to deal with them when they pop back into our lives. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Hannah. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep watching videos just like this one. Hannah Brencher, thank you so much for joining us on Undistracted. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I've been so excited to have this conversation.
And I do appreciate you taking the time because your books are ones that I think collectively help people learn how to understand identity, how to come back to the truth of our identity at times where it may feel a little bit shaken. Why is that theme of finding truth in identity and also knowing our own value something that is so important to you?
I think that it's so important to me just because I think the world does like a really solid job of trying to tell us what to chase after and what to go after and what actually matters. And I have done my fair share of, trying to chase after those things. And it never really filled me. It never really made me feel like, okay, like that's what I've been looking for, And so in taking time to figure out my true identity and my purpose and what I really feel like I'm called to do and how I'm called to show up in this world and serve has filled me with that purpose that I've always wanted and needed. But I think that so often we can get stuck in lies, or we can get stuck in thinking, oh, well, if I just chase this next pillar of success, then finally things are going to click. I'm going to be happy, and it was never there for me. And so I think I'm doing the best that I can to show people like, hey, like this is where I found the most fulfillment. This is where I found enjoyment and peace and all of those things that, matter to me.
Was there something that particularly happened in your life that did make you realize, or where you had that kind of first moment of thinking, I need to actually address this in my own life and understand who I am?
I would say probably the most pivotal thing has been my journey with depression, just because it's something that I have dealt with over the years in two bouts, once in 2010 and then once again in 2014. And since that point, I feel like I've definitely been in like a remission of depression. But I think depression tries its hardest to like get you to try to convince you that you're someone that you're not. And it really, especially that second time, really rattled me. And I realized, okay, like the things that I've built an identity on before, I can't necessarily move forward and keep doing that because it's not sustainable. It's burning me out. And so I definitely think after that second time with depression, I was forced to take a step back and really look at my life and everything that I was doing and everything that I was working towards and figure out, is this what I want? And does this make me happy? And I think it was one of the interesting things that happened right before I went through that second journey with depression was I had gone to a conference and we had to do like a vision of where we saw ourselves in 5 years. And we had to like spread out across the room and like lay down and close our eyes. I was like so anti this exercise. I hated it. I'm like the type of person that's like, okay, you want to do something in 5 years, like get out and do it. Like, let's not lay down on the floor and dream about it. And so I was like not wanting to do this at all. I remember being like so adamant against it. And then in actually doing it, I ended up like weeping on the floor. Like I was crying my eyes out because I closed my eyes and it was maybe one of the first times that I just stopped that go, go, go pace. And like, I had this very clear vision of where I saw myself in 5 years, but it was like not the vision that I was expecting at all. So like, I would say like that probably like wasn't my vision for my life. And it was like, I was in this house and I was surrounded by people and I had someone beside me and I knew that person, like I was in love with that person and I had a family. And that was very confusing to me because if you had asked me, I would have told you like the vision was to hustle and to move and to go all over the country and to do as many things as you could possibly do. And I think what made me cry was realizing, whoa, like I didn't even realize I wanted that. And I feel so far from even being able to figure out what would be the building blocks to get me to that place. And I think it was through that depression that I started to establish some like more sustainable rhythms for my life, more rootedness. And then that set me up for honestly like the life that I live today, which is exactly what I saw in that vision. I just felt so hopeless in that moment because I was like, I'm not doing anything in my life right now that would mean that in 5 years from now, I'm going to be in that place.
Yeah. Was it hard for you to let go of some of those other ideas of what success looked like or what your future might look like compared to what you now have actually worked to create?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's been hard, but at the same time, like, because you constantly have to like reorient yourself to be like, that's not what I'm chasing anymore. I'm not chasing that, you know? And I think it creeps in. I definitely think there are days or, you know, seasons where I battle with that of being like, oh, but like, I want to be seen in that regard, or I want to be at that conference, or I want to be doing that thing. And then I realize like, hold up, no, like whatever opportunities are meant to happen for you, they're going to happen for you. But like, this is where you are and this is what you chose. And it's only a short blip compared to like how fulfilling and how good it feels to be in a healthy space and to like live fully into these moments. You know what I mean? Because I think after years and years of chasing it and you start to realize like, no, it's all right here. And if it isn't here, I have the power to build it right here. And that obviously is a slower, harder choice, but it's just, it fills me with this joy that I have never had before.
It's really good yeah, and it's really good you've been able to get to that place, because I think for a lot of people, what they would need to do is find their sense of value in something other than the hustle or the achievements or the platform, whatever it might look like in their context. How did you find a sense of value outside of some of these other things that you thought would have got you to that point?
It was a hard, long journey to kind of like displace that value. But I think what I learned, especially in that depression, where like it was a very interesting depression in the sense of like I had a moment where I knew the moment the depression hit, which is doesn't happen for a lot of people, but I felt an actual physical pain from the top of my head down to my toes. And it was like from that point forward, my brain did not feel like my own anymore. Like I didn't know how to control it. I didn't know how to get out of this paralysis. Like I felt helpless. And I think at that point, fighting for my life for 4 months, I realized none of this actually matters if I'm not healthy, if I'm not here, you know. And it was because of, I believe, going at a very unsustainable pace that this happened. I remember on the journey and on the road to get medication, I met with the doctor and she kind of had me like talk about my life over the last few years. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll tell her everything, you know, all my accomplishments, all these things. And she was like, well, this isn't surprising. Like you were on a very fast train that was geared towards a train wreck. Like obviously this was going to happen. You were not going to be able to sustain this pace. You were going to burn out.
Yeah.
And so that's always kind of brought me back to center of like, if I am working at a pace that's not sustainable, because it's happened in seasons where I have to scale back and be like, hold up, like I need to put some different boundaries up. I need to say no to some things. Like that actually just happened recently. And I think now I have the wisdom to be able to step back and know, okay, this is not healthy. This is not sustainable. This does not allow me to be the best person for the people in my life. And that's not just, you know, my husband or my baby, but like my friends, my family, my community, my online community. I want to be the best version of myself for all of those people. And I think that actually means taking care of the basics way more than the hustle, because you can hustle and achieve some success, but you will only achieve the amount of success that is kind of meant for you, you know, like you can't. And I think that when you can like release your hands from it and be like, okay, I'm trusting in God and I'm just I'm just going to flow with this. And it's amazing what happens and what happens in a much more simpler way.
And it's not going to be fulfilling if it just breaks you, if you're not finding
Exactly.
that kind of energy in there. But I wonder, your depression is something that you speak about a lot so openly, and it obviously has been a really hard couple of particular seasons for you, but there's also good that has come out of it, as we've heard you share just now. So do you look at those times with a sense of appreciation at all, or is it something that in a way you wish you hadn't gone through?
Oh, 100% appreciate it. Like, would go through it 1,000 times again over to have gotten to the place that I am at now. Obviously I would never wish it on anybody. It was, especially that second depression was the hardest thing in my life. But it really changed some things that needed to be changed, and it really set me up on just like the trajectory that I'm on today. And so I found so much purpose in that depression. And I also I feel like my faith really became real in that depression, and my faith became my own in that depression. And that has been critical for me.
And you have then taken those experiences and shared them with us, and I think really changed a lot of people's lives through doing that. I consider you one of the sort of OG bloggers out there that have you've been at this for a while, and you've done it well.
I love blogging.
It's so good, and it shares so much of your personal story. So what was it that originally made you decide to share personally, to make your stories something that were public?
I mean, I did it at a time where I had no discernment whatsoever. So, I mean, I started my last year of college. I remember I had like a newspaper column. I was the editor of the newspaper, and my friend Carly was like, you have these stories like all the time. Like, you should start a blog. And that was like the height of blogging. Like, blogging was the thing, Julia and Julia, and I started a blog, and it was so funny because I remember like in college, I was like so involved in so many things, but you get to that senior year of college and you realize you can't take any of it with you. Like, you have to leave it all behind, everything that you established, every role that you thought was yours. And that blog was the first thing that I realized, I get to take this with me. Like, this doesn't end here. Like, this actually is an extension of whatever is going to happen next. And that's kind of like, I started sharing personally and vulnerably, and probably with little to no boundaries. I look back on some of those blog posts and I'm like, wow, you were just putting it all out there. You were totally subtweeting in blog form about boys that broke your heart, And so I definitely think like I love to share on a personal level. I definitely feel like I have put up some like guardrails and boundaries for myself when it comes to sharing, because at the end of the day, I never want to get to the place where I feel like my life is content, like where I feel like, oh, I have to live this good story, or my baby has to do this, or like we have to have this in our marriage because we have to share it. Because I see a lot of that online, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think that like you have to be in your healthiest place, like, or else like it's, the marriage in itself is its like own business, like being a parent, like that is its own full-time job. And so I never want to get to a place where I feel like I have to like lift up my phone and like document whoever is around me, or like I have to mind my life for content. And so I definitely have learned that over the years, but I love sharing vulnerably. And I love, so much as I feel comfortable with opening that door, I want to let people know where I've been and what I've walked through, because I know it can help. And that's the most important thing, is that my hope and prayer when you read the books and when you go onto the blogs, that you would feel known and you would feel seen and you could apply it to your own life. Because like, I feel like, especially in this season, my biggest mission is to inspire people to be participants in their own story and not spectators. Like, we're living in such a spectator world that I want to be like, get off the phone and like, go live, go apply it, go do it,
You've said in your latest book, Fighting Forward, I think a lot of things that really touch on this idea of maintaining uniqueness instead of comparison, and really walking out your own life as opposed to trying to mimic other people's. Do you think that our culture, our society values uniqueness, or is it almost countercultural to be trying to pursue individuality in that way?
That's a great question. I think it's both and, I think honestly, I feel like at the end of the day, the people that create something unique and something real and something that like took many hours in a dark room to create, I think they will come out on top. I really truly believe that. Because I don't know, like there's something more to that than just being an imitator of what is already out there. And I don't know, like I guess I'm one of those people because I've spoken up more recently on social media about like you have to cultivate your craft. You have to, like, if you want to be a writer, you need to be in the chair and you need to be writing. If you want to be doing video, you need to be out there doing video. You do not need to be watching everybody else do it. And you do not need to be hopping on the latest trends, because the trends will change and we will move to a new platform. And like, and then where will you be, And so I have nothing against people that are like dancing on Instagram because it's the new TikTok, or like doing all the trends. But at the end of the day, a trend is just something that somebody else created and then you mimicked it. And so I think like, I don't know. I think that I want to put in the hours for myself to create something unique, something that maybe people haven't seen before, they haven't read before, because that's ultimately, I think, how you have an edge within a very crowded world and society,
One of the biggest difficulties people face in that is trying to find what their one thing is, or what unique thing they can do. What's your recommendation for people who are in that place, maybe trying to understand what calling is? How did you know that writing was what you wanted to offer the world?
I think honestly, like I would just challenge people to go into like a space of like experimentation. Like if you can treat everything like an experiment, like there's not this like pressure on you in the way that if you're like, this has to be my one thing, because writing, yes, has always been my one thing. But I also think that that's a very like rare thing, that it would be, to me, it was cultivated at such a young age because my grandmother spoke it into me when I was 6. I don't know why she spoke it into me. I'm not sure what she saw, but she said, you'll write books, your name is going to be on bookshelves. And at that point in my life, like my grandmother has been one of the most pivotal people in my life. I wanted to do anything I could to prove her right, But I also think too that like over the years, writing has been my one thing, but there have been so many other things that I've become interested in or wanted to cultivate or wanted to try out, that if I hadn't tried them out, I probably would have never known like, oh, I'm good at that, or I like that, or that's beneficial to me. Like I definitely probably wouldn't have moved into doing public speaking. And then when the pandemic happened and speaking wasn't happening, I did more of online courses and realized, wow, I really like this. I like this being on video, teaching from the comfort of my own home, where I can keep my habits and my disciplines and my rhythms and the things that keep me the healthiest. And so I don't know. I think that you have to be willing to step out and try something and stick with it for a little bit longer than like a few days or a week to realize if you like it. And that's where I'm like, if you think it might be writing, then I would challenge you to write before you create a blog or before you write a book, like, because those are things that you have to sustain. You have to be committed to them. And so if you can just stay in that practice phase for a little bit longer to be like, is this something I want to invest in? Oh, do I want to do photography? I'm going to try to figure this out before I go and buy this $1,200 camera, and have fun with that process and be okay if that thing doesn't end up being your thing. You will find it if you keep seeking it.
Yeah, and I really like something that you say in Fighting Forward about how when you're doing something and you feel closer to God doing it, that's a sure sign that you're on the right path.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's honestly why I show up to write every single day. And I feel the same way about everything that I post on social media is actually rooted in words and writing. And that's where I feel like a deep communion with God. And so where a lot of people are very burnt out by social media, I view social media to be a very spiritual thing, because I know that, honestly, I know that God is in every aspect of my life. He's in everything that we seek to do, if we would seek to do it to bring him glory, And so I think, I don't know, I think realizing that it's like, okay, like it's okay to try something, and it's okay if that thing doesn't work out, or that doesn't end up being the thing that you thought it would be. That was me in college, and me for a lot of things that I tried. I thought I was going to like love public relations. And then I did public relations and was like, I don't love this. But if I did love it, I would have stuck with it, and I would have done it to the glory of God, you know? And so I think that the problem lies in people thinking that it's an overnight thing, that like you just find it and it clicks, and then you're just,
Yeah.
And I just don't think it happens that way. I think it happens like most things in life. It is slow, and it is sometimes feels like it's not moving, and you go through seasons of doubt and drought, and if you stick with it though, you will experience that fruit.
And I think you can sometimes just know that even if something is hard, you are on the right track, and that motivates you to kind of stick with it. But I really like as well, in the context of talking about your relationship to God, you say you have this junk hour. What is that?
Yeah. So it's my opposite of a quiet hour, quiet time. I just don't understand why we call it quiet time, because I'm like, yeah, I'm personally maybe quiet, but I feel like it's really my time to like converse with God. And so I call it junk hour, because that's where I am going to take everything that I have questions about, and everything that I'm just trying to sort through, and daily life, and bring that to God, and commune with him. But then at the end of the day, also like, try to be quiet long enough to figure out what he wants to say to me, But I think, I think that so often we get into this space of like, we realize like we do something, and then we're like, oh, like that wasn't the nicest thing, or I should have said that better, or like, oh, I didn't like the way that made me feel, or I don't like that I just did that. And then we just try to do better and move forward. And I try to cultivate a practice of like, okay, no, I'm going to take that into my time with God tomorrow. Like, I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to try to be better than that, And so it's really kind of helped me work through some issues with God, instead of just thinking that I need to come to God and he needs to supply everything for me. And he always will. But it puts us more on like a relational level when I look at it like that junk hour of like, let's haul some things into the light. Like, let's actually go through some transformation here.
And in talking about transformation, there's this sense in the middle of it, whether it's how you're talking to God, or even just the things that you have a vision board about. We all seem to have, I would say most of us at least, have this desire to become a better version of ourselves, or to live this life that we feel like we can be held back from. How can we approach improvement, self-betterment, transformation, all of these things in a healthy way? Because sometimes it can be an addiction, as you even share about from your own personal experiences.
Yeah, I'm like the queen of that stuff. I mean, I still am. I love it. I'm like, that's my hobby, is like transformation. I think I am all for transformation. I am all for self-betterment. I am all for those things. But like, I also think that like, I don't know, I always go back to like New Year's resolutions and why they fail so miserably. It's because you cannot actually overhaul your entire life in the matter of an hour striking midnight. Like that, nothing has changed. And so building sustainable rhythms, routines, and disciplines that at the end of the day make you look like a different person, like that would be the track that I would probably suggest to people. And I would probably say like, start in one area. If you need to start in 5 different areas, like then I would make those very, very, very small micro steps, and those micro steps, they add up, they matter, they change you. But like, you have to be willing to see progress at that root level for you to be able to appreciate it, because it's just like, we live in a drive-through culture. We live in like a microwave culture. And yet really like the best stuff takes time. It takes time to simmer. It takes time to grow. It's a slow, consistent process. And once you fall in love with that consistency, like it does become addicting. But I always have to remember, you know, like I saw this like not meme the other day, but I saw this quote the other day from somebody that was saying like, you know, when you get a recommendation for like a Netflix show from your friend and they say, hey, like the first 2 episodes are kind of rough, but like then you're really going to get into it, you know? Like why don't we apply that to other things in our life? And I was like, ooh, you know, like it's with everything that we go through, whether that is, okay, like I want to be more disciplined in fitness, or I want to read my Bible more, or I want to pray more. It's like, you have to predict that it's going to be slow to start. You might get a little momentum at the very beginning, but then it's like reality is going to hit and it's going to be hard to sustain. And then you also have to realize that like, as you keep showing up, not every single day is going to produce some kind of magic, but like, the magic is actually in continuing to show up even when you don't feel like it.
How do you motivate yourself to show up? Because given that consistency is such an important thing and that decision to show up matters so much, how do you motivate yourself to continuously do that?
I do not motivate myself. That's how I do it. I don't even believe in motivation so much as I think like I always refer to motivation as like the friend that texts you and says, I'm going to be there. And then they always cancel, always. And we all have that friend. We know who that friend is. If we don't have that friend, you are that friend. But like, I think motivation is like there at a specific time, but like never sticks around for the long haul. And like, I think you've probably experienced it. I know I've experienced it where I'll be like plugging along and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Tonight I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And then I get to the end of the day and I'm like, I'm tired and I want to watch a show, or I don't want to do any of this. And that's because it's like motivation is not actually, it's so different than discipline. And so when it comes to, you know, showing up, like I feel like even though it's pretty cut and dry and like matter of fact to me, I just make myself show up even if I don't feel like it, you know? I think that like I'm a believer in like listening to my body, listening to my gut, listening to my spirit. At the same time, I do not listen to all of my feelings because my feelings will lead me in so many directions that are not going to be productive. There is a variety of things on my to-do list that I do not feel like doing, but I know that I will feel happier once I have done them. I will be better because of it. Other people will be better because of it. And so sometimes I just have to be like, I don't feel it, but I'm doing it anyway. And then when those days happen, I just try to make it as enjoyable possible. You know, like I'll try to make it something that I look forward to, or
at least have a good cup have a good cup of tea by your side, and then it makes it a whole bunch easier. But in the way that we create these rhythms, these habits that help us get to these kind of goals that we have, I think even in choosing what ones we apply, you can start to mimic other people, you know, say your morning routine is a good cup of tea and some Bible time. I could go, oh, well, if I do tea and Bible, then maybe I'll have these same kind of outcomes. How do we create disciplines, habits that are actually unique to ourselves and don't just become another way we're copying somebody else, if that makes sense?
Well, I mean, I think that there can be something actually good about mimicking in that sense. If it's propelling you to actually do something in your life to make your life better, you know, if you're just like going through the motions to be like, I just want to, you know, document my morning routine or whatever, unless it's actually doing something for you, you know, like I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, like this is the way that she shows up and she starts her morning and it seems to be working for her. I'm just going to like try it out, you know? But I think it's taking that additional step then to say, is this working for me? Is this not working for me? And what could be more beneficial for me in this season, you know, and kind of stack from there. Because I often find that usually like one habit will set the tone for a lot of other habits, you know? And so like for me, one of those habits, like at the start of this year, you know, we wrote down our goals and everything. And I really wanted to be consistent with like reading the scriptures in community. That was like a thing for me. And I feel like all of last year, honestly, throughout throughout the last 2 years, maybe I kind of bopped around all over the place because I was going where I felt inspired. And then I couldn't really call to memory much of what happened, you know? And so I have a group of girlfriends, and we read scripture. We read a chapter every single day for 5 days a week. So we get the weekends off to do whatever we're going to do. I still, get into my Bible, but that time looks a little bit different with God. And we read one chapter, and we have this group text, and we just say what struck us, what stood out to us, what we had questions about, and that has become this very consistent rhythm in my daily life. And it's so crazy because like these girls have become like a huge part of my life in a way that they weren't before. Like 2 of my best friends are in that group. And so like that, like we always had that relationship established, but like 2 other girls, like I've known, but like feel so much closer to now that we do this together. And then one girl literally had never met her before until last night. I met her at an event and was like, we were like kindred sisters because we've been on this road together. But like that small habit that happens in the morning aligns a lot of things for me. It aligns my quiet time. It aligns that first cup of coffee that I look so forward to. It aligns like this little ritual that I have now where my husband bought me these journals, these 5-year journals where like you write down a memory from every single day.
Wow.
And I've stuck with it every single day since he got me those journals because I hitch it right on to these other habits that I have. I know that I will get up out of bed early for a cup of coffee. Once I am there with my cup of coffee and my blankets and everything and the house is quiet, I will read my scriptures, I will journal, and I will write down my memory. And there I have a morning routine that works for me that makes me feel like, oh man, I'm going to show up better all over my life because of this. And the one other thing that I do in that time when I'm journaling is I ask God, what do you need me to see today? Like, what do you need me to do today? Because those things are always going to take priority over what I think should happen in a day. And I always say that and preface that to say, like, you have to test those things. So I can't guarantee that every single day God speaks clearly to me. You know, like sometimes it may be my thoughts running wild, but like a lot of times it is these simple, small, faithful acts that I probably wouldn't have put into my day. I probably wouldn't have structured it that way. And that's how I know it's God, you know?
Such a good question to actually be asking as part of that time, because it can be a very self-focused time. So it's good that you do that. But Hannah, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. I want to ask you a question as we wrap it up that I ask most of our guests. Simply, what does it mean to you to live an undistracted life in pursuit of your passions, your purposes? What would that look like to you?
To me right now in this season, I feel like living an undistracted life is living a semi-unplugged life. That has been huge for me. That's been a journey that I've been on for the last almost 10 months where, you know, I hit my birthday on May 31st of last year, and I really felt like God was telling me to unplug, like turn off the phone. And I started doing it just to be obedient. I have like my little tracker here because I'm almost at 1,000 hours.
Wow.
Of just turning my phone off. And it has been the most refreshing, most revitalizing thing for me, because I think that we've come to a place in our society where we are just so addicted to whatever is happening on the phone and on the screen. But at the same time, we're so afraid to miss out that we're actually missing out on what is right in front of us. And so for me, living undistracted is being fully present in the moment that I'm in with the people that I am with.
Yeah.
Does that make me a not very good text messenger? Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not the best at that. But like, it means that I am fully present with the people that I'm with when I'm with them. And that matters more to me, that I would be in my life. And so yeah, that to me is what undistracted looks like. And that kind of applies to all areas in being a mother and being a wife and being in the work that I show up to do, that I want to do it focused and I want to do it unplugged and undistracted, so that I can produce my best work.
And I think the people that are close to you are going to know that Hannah's focusing on this. Hannah has decided to unplug. It's okay that she's not texting me back right now, so it shouldn't affect the relationships too much. But Hannah, thank you again for joining us on Undistracted. Really do appreciate it. And I'll remind everybody to check out your new book. It's called Fighting Forward. It is a brilliant read. Hannah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun.